Welcome back to Kings of the North. We are in Las Vegas. We just finished up day 2 of Big 12 Media Days on Wednesday. We're bringing you this recorded show on Thursday, a bunch of interviews. West Virginia heavy. We had West Virginia, BYU, and Colorado from the North as part of day 2. You can go back and watch our show from day 1 that dropped on Tuesday, but this is going to be a bunch of interviews, starting off with West Virginia quarterback Garrett Greene. Now, they didn't get to the Kings of the North table, but we went and found him, and we had a good conversation with Garrett Greene about what he can do this year. And then we talked to Neal Brown. A lot of questions with Neal Brown, the West Virginia head coach, about Garrett Greene. The word reckless was used for how Garrett Greene plays, but I like a quarterback with a little recklessness in him. I think to get over the top in big games, you need some of that. And so I think you will learn about the West Virginia expectation level, the offense, and what their quarterback might do this year. And then Wyatt Milum, their All-American level tackle, also had a conversation with us. Big game with Penn State. Great opportunity to open the season. That opens the show. 3 West Virginia interviews here on Kings of the North. Then we talked to Adam Rittenberg from ESPN.com. Great friend. Ran through the coaching situations at all 8 Northern schools in the Big 12, from BYU and Cincinnati to Kansas and Kansas State. They're joining KOTN, by the way, to Colorado and Iowa State and West Virginia and Utah, where everybody stands. Good state of the program addresses, and also talk some West Virginia in there. Then we went to Mark Vassett. We want to be a home for Northern punters. The Colorado punter, he's Australian, just like Mason Fletcher, the Cincinnati punter that was on the show on Tuesday. We talked to him. Then Tyrel Kirkham, who is the chief marketing officer for the Big 12, joined the show. We talked about branding and how it affects the ball. And so I think where the Big 12 is right now and the attention it is trying to get, I think it's an interesting conversation about what they need to do to make sure people are aware of the good football we expect to be played in this conference. And we wrapped it up with Shehan Jeyarajah, great friend from CBS Sports, the king of the Big 12. He knows this league inside and out. So another good conversation to sort of wrap up everything holistically about this league. So that is 7 interviews. This is going to be a 7-interview show. Next week, we will welcome Kansas and Kansas State to Kings of the North with a show heavy on interviewing their people. And then I think we'll talk a little Nick Saban next week as well. So we continue to grow. We continue to get out there. We met a lot of people. We passed out a lot of cards. I got business cards printed up at Kinko's. They did a good job. I made the logo. So hopefully, we spread the word of Kings of the North. But we'll start it off with, who cares about that? You guys care about interesting interviews here. Garrett Greene, Neal Brown, Wyatt Milum for West Virginia will kick off Kings of the North right now.
I think that, through my time here, I know Brett Favre had a quote that, he ripped the ball and the OC asked him why, and he said, because I can. So I think, as I've grown in his offense, I've kind of learned what I can and can't do. I still have that reckless where maybe I will throw it 50 yards on the run, all the way to the other hash, maybe I'll do that, but, I think last year I cut down a lot on the what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Because now with the mic and the headset, 3 years ago I probably would have heard that a lot more. But yeah, no, I think Coach Brown's done a really good job of kind of letting me play and practice, and then coaching me on the side to where that's translated well in the games.
Because I would imagine, especially, the schedule you guys are going to play is awesome, but a lot of these games, like these toss-up games, that kind of play might be the difference between winning and losing. And sometimes nobody wants to coach that out of you, right? Because that might be the difference maker between a good and a great season for West Virginia, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And one play sticks out to me against Oklahoma State. It was 4th and 1. I pulled it because for whatever reason, and I got stopped short, and they went down and scored, and that was kind of the icing of the game. So it's just learning when to put the ball in my hands, and then when to let the other guys kind of go for it.
At this point in your career, how confident are you in those moments? How comfortable and confident, and to have done it now for as long as you have, how much better of a quarterback will that make you this year?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just our whole offensive confidence. Especially in 2-minute drills last year. We were really, really efficient. Even whether it was 2 minute into half, 2 minute into game, we were really good at them. And that all goes back to, I know the O-line's going to pick up the pressure. I know the wide receivers are going to be there on time and where they're supposed to be. Because we rep it so much throughout throughout fall camp and, all the practice that we have, we rep 2 minute, we rep those kind of high pressure situations where you need to get this. We rep it so much that when we're out there, it's kind of just the ball gets rolling and then we're just on the go.
What do you think this opportunity, home crowd in Morgantown, week 1, big noon, Penn State, this could be one that West Virginia fans are talking about for a long time, right?
Yeah. No, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's kind of a great test to how far the Big 12's come. If we perform well in that game, because they're obviously one of the better Big 10 schools, and they have been for a while. So if the Big 12, we can go and knock them off, that makes our conference look better. And I know our fans will get behind us for sure.
Yeah. Coach Brown's been saying a lot today, like, hey man, people are talking about the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. They don't talk about my guy enough.
Yeah.
When your coach is saying that, has your back like that? What do you think of it?
Yeah, no, I've known Coach Brown since I was a sophomore in high school. That's when he offered me at Troy. He's kind of like second dad almost. I hate saying that, but he really is. I know he has the utmost confidence in me. I'm trying to go perform the best I can for him.
Okay. Is this what you had in your head when you decided to come to West Virginia, like where you are and what's ahead of you right now?
There's still a lot of things that I want to do. This season, I want to win West Virginia Big 12 championship. It's something we haven't done. That's definitely still something that I want to do, and I want to bring West Virginia back on the national map like it was with Gino and Tavon, and all those guys that came before me. I want to bring West Virginia back to where it was then.
Isn't that like you're just saying like first names there? Like, can you imagine down the road people saying Garrett?
Yeah, no, that's what I want. But I want them to first remember the 2024 West Virginia team. The team that won the Big 12. I'd much rather them remember that than me by first name.
I'm split on this, right? It puts us as the head football coach, it puts us at a competitive disadvantage because everybody else isn't doing it. We play 9 league games. All the leagues don't play 9 conference games. And then we're playing 2 rival opponents the last several years. In 5 out of the 6 years, that we've been in West Virginia, we've played 11 Power 4 now conference opponents, or Power 4 opponents, which, it puts us at a competitive disadvantage, again, because everybody else is not doing it. But I do get it from a fan's perspective, too. We're the furthest team in the Big 12 East. We still are, but at least we have a regional opponent now in Cincinnati. But we're still far. So it's important from a fan perspective to be able to play these regional rivalries. And we've been able to do that. We've played Maryland. We've played Virginia Tech. We've played Penn State. We've played Pitt, right? And so that's really good from our fan perspective. Now, what I think the best formula for us moving forward is play 7 home games every year, which every other year we've missed that opportunity. 7 home games, you play a G5 and FCS, and then one of those regional rivalries, and then you play your non-conference games.
Going back to the run thing, the cycles,
you
commit to the young offensive line. And your quarterback play could have been better. Really. Did you kind of lean into this? Can you see the cycle coming back and think, hey, maybe that can match up the development, the trend?
No,
it does seem like it's clipped a little bit.
Yeah, so what I would say is going back to then, it was more about, from a quarterback perspective, what was on the roster and what we could get. And then trying to make the most of those, and I really feel like that Jarrett Dagey at times played really, really well for us, and I think he gets underappreciated just because we weren't good enough around him. And he had to deal with some really young offensive line. And so that's not totally fair to him. But as the league started to change, and as I got a better feel for who we needed to be successful at West Virginia, it became crystal clear that, first of all, we needed a dual threat quarterback. And then second of all, we needed to build the offense around a dual threat quarterback. And then how do we take advantage of the speed we have? Because we have speed, and it's about, going back as an offensive football coach and really studying and how can we spread the field and really kind of get our guys in one-on-one situations. That's to me, that's the part of the play caller or the scheming is how do you get your best players in one-on-one situations?
When you have an offensive philosophy like that with a dual threat quarterback, and then you have a guy with Garrett's skill set, when it comes to running, do you hold yourself back at all? Calling plays, if we don't want to run him too much, do you hold him back at all when he has scrambling situations, or do you just, that's in your skill set, we're going to let it rip if it's there taken?
Yeah, so I think with Garrett, what we've learned to do is you just got to let him play.
Yep.
And sometimes he plays a little reckless, and you just have to be okay with that. His decision-making has got considerably better. He's off-the-cuff guy. He's not I wish he slid more. I wish he ran out of bounds more. But if I try to control that, one of the things that's best about him is his competitiveness and the chip on the shoulder that he plays with. And so if you try to really tame that, man, you're really taming what his best qualities are. And so that's not fair to him. And so is he going to run the ball? Yes. Do I hold my breath sometimes that, he gets hit a little bit more than I would like? Yes. But in the long run, I think that really would limit him as a player if I try to put controls on him.
And so when you have a player who has that, you said a little bit reckless at times, but he matures, he gets older. Sometimes that very intriguing of a guy who's got that, he'll let it rip, but now he's learned all the lessons. Like, what could be out there for him when he's a veteran, mature guy with a reckless gene?
Yeah, he's gotten better, and his decision-making has gotten better. If you look at him, he threw 16 touchdowns and like 4 interceptions last year. So his decision-making got quite a bit better. Now the step for him is he's got to go and be more of an efficient passer. And that's really what we've been working with him from a fundamental standpoint.
Coach, back to scheduling for a second. In terms of the league schedule, I believe you played the teams ranked 2 through 6 this season. What type of an opportunity does that present in the conference season?
Yeah, you can't look at the preseason because who knows, right? But we do. We play a challenging schedule. We don't ease into it at all. Obviously, Penn State, but then we host Kansas, I think week 4, right? And Lance has done a tremendous job there at Kansas. Jalen Daniels is electric. He put on a show last time they were in Morgantown. That's a game that I'd love to forget. And they've got Devin Neal. They've done a really good job schematically, offensively, doing some of the things we were just talking about spreading people out, getting them in one-on-one situations. And then defensively, they played really good football toward the end of the year last year. And then we got to go to Stillwater, and it's this league week in and week out. And the great thing is you're going to have a chance to win. Bad thing is you're going to have a chance, everybody's good enough to beat you, right? And so you got to be able to navigate that and be able to win close football games. But this is an extremely deep league. Our schedule's tough. But I think everybody in our league is going to, once they get into conference games, it's tough.
Sticking with the schedule here for a second, when you really don't ease into a season, you've got 2 big games in non-conference, and you get right into it with conference play. I'm assuming then you don't have to get creative with motivation in the preseason. It's just, hey, the task is in front of you, right?
Yeah, well, we've got to do a better job of. I thought our guys were ready to play last year. We just didn't execute at a high enough level to win the game at Penn State. What we've got to do, and where we spend a lot of time on, is, man, how do we play better in that first game? And so we're not easing into it. So we're going to have a little bit more physical camp. We're going to put more emphasis on our early scrimmages, maybe go a little bit longer, do some more high-speed special teams work to get us ready for that game. And that's part of, every time as a coach, every year, you go back to the evaluation. What can I do better? What do we need to do better? And one of the things that I felt like we need to do better is we played really well at the end of the year, and that's been really for almost the entire tenure. We played really well, and I'm talking about as a head coach. We played really well at the end of the year, but how do we come out of the gates faster week 1? And that's something we spend a bunch of time on.
Neal, you've answered a lot of schedule questions, but to get a team like Penn State in Morgantown to open the year, what is the opportunity there? What do you think that stadium is going to be like, your fans are going to be like for that game?
Well, there's a long history in the rivalry, and it's been a one-sided rivalry. We've had 2 wins since the 50s, 84 and 88. Coach Neal had some really good teams that beat Penn State. This is the first time that Penn State's been to Morgantown in a really long time, and it's the big noon kickoff. We got the big noon show there, and so fan base is always going to be excited for game 1. The fact that it is the big noon kickoff, the fact that we have their crew there for the big noon show, the fact that it's Penn State, it's going to be electric, and it's a huge opportunity. It's a huge challenge, huge opportunity for us. It's also a marquee game for the Big 12. Big 12 quarterbacks, but you don't hear Garrett Greene mentioned. And if you look at his numbers, and you just put his numbers compared to some of these other guys that are getting talked about, and you hit the names, like his would be really, really favorable. And so, and you talk about Wyatt Milum, I really feel like he's got a chance to be the best tackle in our conference. He's been a little under radar. He didn't make first team all conference last year, which is shocking to me. Haven't get him a sack in 2 years. Like, how do you not make first team all conference? That makes sense to me. You look at Sean Martin, who's been playing for a long time, Aubrey Burks. For those guys not to have recognition, I really think is a slap in the face. And so, to me, this year it's not as much about our team, even though I think we're better than that. It's more about the individuals being undervalued and not seeing what they've done so far in their career.
Wyatt Milum, what is the potential of this West Virginia offense in your mind?
I say we're going to be a very elite offense. That's what I believe. I think we're going to be explosive. We're going to be able to throw the ball and run the ball.
Okay. With what you guys have with Jaheim and CJ and then Garrett as a run threat, it feels like you guys can be as dangerous, and what you have up front running the ball as almost any team in the country. How much confidence do you have in that run game?
Yeah, you just know the running. You put the ball in Garrett or CJ or Jaheim's hands, they can go score at any time. So just knowing that, you just make your block. You just got to go get your guy. They'll make a move or make a guy miss, and they can take it to the house.
You've been at West Virginia a long time, but can I ask you about your recruitment and why you wanted to be a Mountaineer?
Just the family. Like when I Coach Brown, when I talked to Coach Brown and Coach Moore, it was just like a family oriented. And playing for your home state, I just want to make the state of West Virginia proud. Because not very many kids from West Virginia get to go play at the Division I level, and I wouldn't want to be, till this day. If I had to go recruitment again, I would still choose West Virginia over any place in the nation.
You could have gone somewhere south, right?
I could have, but West Virginia is my home.
Like, that warms my heart, man. Like, here we're talking about, we got to keep the best North players north, right? I sometimes think or wonder if there are kids in this part of the country who think I have to go south or I have to go to the SEC to play at the highest level. And with what West Virginia has done and is ready to do this year, a guy like you is no, you can do it at home.
Yeah, you can. Big 12 especially. You're playing in the best conference. You're going up against, I don't know how many. I went up against 4 or 5 first rounders in this conference. So you're going up against great talent. So you're going to be able to prove yourself against the best talent in the world.
How rewarding has it been? What's the feedback been like from the fan base when a West Virginia kid plays for the Mountaineers and has the kind of career that you've had?
Oh, they love you. They'll take care of you for life. Just West Virginia, I think West Virginia as a whole gets overlooked as a state, especially. But people from West Virginia succeeding, it's awesome. I'd love to see Frey. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see Doug go make it. So I'm proud of them, and just the fans, they love you. It's a different type of love.
What do you think this opener at home against Penn State is going to be like? What are the fans going to be like on that Saturday?
They're going to be crazy. They're going to be crazy. It's a noon kick, so they probably get up and start drinking around probably 5 a.m. that morning. So, yeah, they're going to be rowdy that day.
All right, joined now by Adam Rittenberg, friend of the program, friend of mine. Come on, I act like you're a friend of a show. You're a friend of a human being. Thanks for joining us, Adam Rittenberg of ESPN.com. West Virginia has been interesting here at Big 12 Media Days about still being disrespected, even though they're picked twice as high in the conference as they were last year. They were picked last year ago. They were picked 7th in the preseason poll this year. What did you think of the Mountaineer vibes this week?
Yeah, no, not quite as salty as they were last year when Neal Brown was really fired up about being picked last. And they disproved that prediction with 9 wins. I mean, their most wins since 2016. And, now this year certainly moved up, as you mentioned, but with who they have coming back from Garrett Greene at quarterback, they have an outstanding offensive tackle who's going to be an NFL draft guy.
Yeah.
Number of running backs who they have a lot of confidence in, and really not a lot of turnover, if any, on their coaching staff. They believe that they can contend for the Big 12 and at least should be in the top 25. I mean, Neal Brown said they're absolutely a top 25 team, but he didn't see them in any of the preseason top 25s. He mentioned the one that I do as well. Which,
he called you out
a little bit. I mean, for our future power rankings, which is fine. But is it? I'm going to mispronounce the name. Is it Milum or Milum?
Milum.
Wyatt Milum, who's their outstanding tackle, said it's disrespect, and it's very common that West Virginia is in this position where they don't get credit for what they've done, and if the people are basically not doing their homework on them going into a season where they bring back a lot. A league that doesn't have Oklahoma and Texas in it any longer, that's very wide open. I mean, the preseason favorite is a newcomer from the Pac-12 in Utah. So West Virginia believes that they should be a team that's talked about as a Big 12 title contender, which now we know is a playoff contender, as well as a preseason top 25 team. And what's great about those statements, and we talked about this as well, is that they have an opportunity right off the bat against another Northern team in Penn State coming into Morgantown to validate that. I mean, they played them last year in State College, wasn't overly competitive. West Virginia went on to have a really good season. Now they can, potentially pull off an upset, and then we're talking about them in a very different light.
I just stumbled across this. It happens. It's a random ballot from the Big 12 preseason poll. I think there were 61 ballots that were turned in. I don't know whose this is. I just found it on my phone. Number 1, Utah. Number 2, West Virginia. Oh, wait, that was me respecting the Mountaineers. So I also told, we did our first playoff predictions in February. We did another one after spring ball. And in February, I had West Virginia in the playoff. And I told, it's one of these things, everybody complains about being disrespected. And I tried to sidle up to Neal Brown. And I was like, hey, I had you in the playoff. And he wasn't too excited about that either. Because then it's like, okay, slow down, stranger. Why are you putting all this pressure on us? But I think legitimately, when you look at the running backs, when you look at the quarterback, an all-American candidate on the offensive line. They shored up their secondary in the portal. They have some linebackers, I think, that are really interesting. I think they're right. Now, the problem is this league was pieced together in the offseason. Half the league is new in the last 2 years, and nobody knows anything. And Neal Brown even said it. Everybody has 30 to 40% roster turnover. So it's hard to be mad at us. What are we supposed to do? We don't have time. You don't get paid for your ballot. You do the best you can. But I kind of like West Virginia playing the disrespect card again because they played it so well last year.
They did. And, it is harder to predict these things. Again, if it was defending myself, if it was a 1-year prediction, not a 3-year prediction, I might have had them in the top 25. But they have done a nice job. I think you even look a couple of years ago, they went 5-7. Neal Brown, people wondered if he was going to be let go. But even in that season, I believe they beat Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. And, that doesn't happen too often for any team in this conference in recent years. And then they come back and obviously put up a 9-win season. So, they're very intriguing. And, going through, I have to go through their schedule and really break down who they play and who they don't play. But I think that they're one of those, if you want to find a sleeper team or a sneaky team that could surprisingly win this conference, I think they're one of the cases you can make. I think UCF is maybe another one. We were obviously talking more about Utah and Kansas State. Maybe Kansas at the top of the league. Oklahoma State brings back a lot. So, this is a league where the margins are really, really slim. Yeah. And so can West Virginia get enough of those toss-up games to go its way again, maybe get a little fortunate with the schedule, and then end up in Arlington, Texas for the championship game?
How good do you think this league is, right? Brett Yormark came out and was pretty bold about it. It does feel like I want to play a game called Would You Rather Be Kansas State or This Other Team? Because I was saying yesterday on the show, it's why does everyone love Ole Miss so much this year? What makes Ole Miss better at anything than Kansas State, right? Do you feel like there are some legitimately good like programs here that could sustain success? You were just talking about your 3-year rankings. Are there 4, 5, 6 teams that can be pretty competitive in major college football?
I think so. I mean, the fact that you have the playoff carrot out there now that's guaranteed for the Big 12 champion is pretty powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's honestly a case that could have been made for the Pac-12 staying together as opposed to breaking apart, because their champion would have been guaranteed a playoff spot. And the Big 12, has that. I look at the continuity at a place like Kansas State. I look at who their head coach is. I look at his track record of putting guys in the NFL, of developing players, who he has on his staff. There's a lot to like if they can keep him. I think it's so much of it's about keeping your coach and having that continuity. That's the case at Kansas State. That's the case at Kansas. I think Lance Leipold has shown, at least so far, that he's committed to that program. They'll open a new stadium next year. So even though they have a really good team this year and they'll lose a lot of good players, I think that's a program that can continue to be one of relevance in this conference. You look at Mike Gundy, your second longest tenured coach in the country, who's obviously still there at Oklahoma State with one of his most experienced teams coming back. Utah, they have their succession plan in place now publicly with Morgan Scalley pegged to take over for Kyle Whittingham. That program won't change dramatically once Kyle retires, although that's certainly something to consider in projecting them out. So they're a team, and they've shown that. I mean, Utah's been one of the most consistent programs in the country really over the last 20 years. So I don't expect that to change moving from the Pac-12 to the Big 12. There's some interesting ones to me, like Arizona. Like Arizona was really bad for a long time, and then Jed Fish turned it around, and they have this team that has a potential to continue that momentum under Brent Brennan, who I think will recruit well and is a very popular guy right now. But can it sustain? History would say they don't, but maybe they will. Maybe the course of that program changes a little bit. So I think there are a number of programs that have that opportunity here. And what's interesting about this league is that a number of teams have flashed. I mean, Cincinnati's flashed. Houston has flashed. Baylor has won this conference, and been in the conference championship game, fairly recently. What happens there? So, Oklahoma State's been really close. So it's a really fun league to talk about.
Kalani Sitake, the BYU coach, was talking about this. I think it's an interesting conversation, especially with the 4 teams that jumped up to the Big 12 last year: UCF, Houston, Cincinnati, and BYU. You look at what Cincinnati and BYU did in year 1 compared to the success that they had in previous years. And it's like, can they handle this? Kalani Sitake was saying that he thought they sort of played better than their 5-7 record last year. He actually wanted to make sure that they didn't lose sight of the things that they did well last year, even though it wasn't the kind of season they wanted. It feels like they've built like a very interesting quarterback room. Like they've gone out and gotten a lot of guys, and then they add McKay Hillstead as a Utah State transfer. It feels like a quarterback of the future, maybe a quarterback of the now there. That I was talking with John Cunningham, and I saw you were talking with him this week as well, the Cincinnati AD. The idea there was like Cincinnati, even if you're in a tough spot making a jump, you'd much rather be in the Big 12 than not. I think BYU would much rather be in the Big 12 than not. But when you think about teams, Cincinnati and BYU, do you think they can handle the jump? Or do you think that they may be in for a tough slog? It felt like Sitake was trying to say, you know what, we'll get this turned around quicker than you think.
Yeah, and again, I think it comes down to the quarterback spot. I mean, that's a place where they have incredible history, and it was not good last year. I'm always a little leery when you ask a coach about his quarterback situation and he mentions 4 quarterbacks. So can one of them step up and take this thing and stabilize it? I'll feel a lot better about their chances, because it is an adjustment. They weren't going from group of 5 to power 4 or 5, whatever it is now. They were going from independent, and their schedules were so weird. They had this front-loaded schedule of Power 5 opponents, and then it would kind of fall off a cliff. So it's hard to sustain, that level throughout the entire season like they have to do as a member of the Big 12. Cincinnati was a case of a loaded team that largely broke apart at the same time they were entering a new conference under a new coach. And they were weird, right? And Scott Satterfield talked to us about this, and you probably heard it too. It's incongruent that a team could finish 5 or 5th nationally in rushing and win 3 games. Like that shouldn't happen. So if they can replicate the rushing And if they can maintain or elevate on the defensive side with a new coordinator from Iowa State, who they're really excited about, runs the same scheme, the three high safety is John Haycock has done a great job there with the Cyclones. I haven't even mentioned them. That's another team that's pretty good. I mean, there's UCF, you really go on down. But if they can improve defensively and they get more out of the quarterback position, that's going to be the big key. Bringing in the transfer from Indiana, is he the answer?
Right.
Because
Sorsby,
they just weren't. Sorsby, they were not good at that spot last year. The quarterback they lost helped Northwestern, to a surprising season in the Big Ten, and Ben Bryant. So they've got to get that position right. Both teams do, really. But I think if they do, they have some other components that would lead to success.
So, do you agree with Utah as the Big 12 favorite?
I have to look at my poll. I think I had Kansas State ahead of them. It's either Kansas State or Utah to me.
How good do you think Avery Johnson at Kansas State can be?
That's the thing. I think he's really good. And it's a program that has a lot of other components to it that are set up well. I know the offensive line is somewhat of a concern, but I think Connor Riley does a really good job there. And they've brought in a transfer to help. They're pretty good at receiver. They're good at running back. They're good on the defensive side of the ball. And having visited there this spring and talking to Avery, talking to Joe Klanderman, their defensive coordinator, who said he's never seen a quarterback, with straight line speed like Avery Johnson has. And, listening to Joey McGuire, the Texas Tech coach, who, obviously was a high school coach, understands the recruiting landscape really, really well. He said it was pretty telling that Will Howard left. Even though he went to Ohio State, even though he went to be the presumed starting quarterback of the Buckeyes, he left because he probably wasn't going to be the starter at Kansas State. I mean, that's how excited that they are about Avery Johnson. And he's the type of athlete that he does not have to be a precision, hit every small window type passer. Chris Kleiman talked to me this spring about he just got to make some layups, some easy passes to complement that rushing ability, and they could give defenses trouble. So he is that quarterback with the ceiling, that the guy that we could all be really discussing from a Heisman Trophy perspective, if he has the type of season that they hope he does. So it's a really interesting program.
If you were trying to win this year, would you rather have seventh year Cam Rising, who's seen it all, or new starter Avery Johnson, who has all this potential but might have a couple bumps? Because those are probably the two best teams in the league, and their quarterback situations both good quarterbacks, but where they are in their progressions couldn't be more different.
Right. And again, to me, if Cam Rising is healthy, I'm taking him. Yep. The guy's a freaking winner. He's won 2 conference championships. He's incredibly tough. And they also have I think a little better defense than Kansas State. I have a little bit more faith in what Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scalley do on that side of the ball with some of their front 7 players that are coming back. I know they had Karina Reed and Junior Tafuna, who's just a massive human. He's a guy that I think will be on NFL radars very, very soon. So if that's the big caveat, because his injury essentially derailed their season last year. They went from a team that a lot of people thought could win a 3rd consecutive Pac-12 title to one on this very field that lost to our alma mater at the end of the year in the Las Vegas Bowl and just didn't have a great season. So if Rising is healthy with their running backs, with the pieces that they've added at receiver, Dorian Singer and others, I think I'd have to go with Utah.
So, big picture question, and we've had this conversation a couple times today. Do you think people are glad that Oklahoma and Texas are gone? Kind of in a certain way. It opens up pathways. Maybe you don't have to deal with the big kid on the block who sucks up all the oxygen in the room. You lose TV money, but is there opportunity here that maybe, this would have been a different media days if Steve Sarkisian and Quinn Ewers were walking around here, right? No,
there'd be a lot more people. Let's just be frank. I mean, I covering this media day, gosh, it must have been 2019, Doug, maybe 2018, down at AT&T Stadium. The media contingent hordes around Texas and Oklahoma were so much bigger than every other school. And they're obviously not here, so it's a little bit more sparsely attended. But in terms of the teams, there's great opportunity. I mean, you really can make a case for so many of these teams if this goes right. And UCF's another one. KJ Jefferson, I mean, seeing him in person, he's a very impressive, physically looking, imposing player in Gus Malzahn's offense. And I know Gus is very confident in what they can do. So that's another team that, if this and this goes right, at least has an opportunity to get to the championship game. Whereas Texas had reached such a level, and this is why they were so high in my future projections for ESPN.com in personnel. They were if they achieve to their talent level, I don't think anyone in this conference was beating them. I think they had reached that point.
Right.
For so long, Texas was this underachiever that would have the personnel and would find a way to screw it up. Last year they had the personnel and they delivered, and they were building up their strength along both lines of scrimmage. And I think that's going to only continue going forward. They're finally producing NFL offensive linemen again, NFL defensive linemen again. And I just think it would have been hard if they were still in this league to consistently compete with them. And Oklahoma, we'll see. I mean, Oklahoma's recruiting had a nice stretch in recruiting. I still have my doubts about them, especially going into the SEC, but they were also a team that dominated this conference for a long time.
Can we play a coach game real quick before
Let's do
you
it.
go? I like you on coaches. You sort of mentioned this already. All right. Utah, Kyle Whittingham, and now the plan to Morgan Scalley, coach in waiting, longtime defensive coordinator. What do you think about the long-term prospects of the head coach position at Utah?
Yeah, I think Kyle, this will be his last year, or next year will be his last year. He said before that he doesn't want to coach well past 65. He turned 65 on November 21st. He told me and some of my colleagues that, he still feels like his kids had to sacrifice so much, or he was so absent from his children's lives. He's got 10 grandchildren. They're all under the age of 10. He wants to be around for them. He's still obviously healthy, energetic. It's going to be hard for him to step away because he loves it, but especially with the fact that Utah could maybe go to the college football playoff after 2 Rose Bowl appearances and multiple Pac-12 championships. If he could win a league title in a third league in however many years it's been, I think he's a guy you build a statue of. He's been the most important figure in Utah football history. At that point, I think you can step down and have a career that you can be really proud of.
Do you like the coach in waiting plan?
Yeah, I like Morgan a lot. I mean, Morgan, again, is a guy who played at Utah when Kyle, I believe, was a defensive coordinator, when Urban Meyer was the head coach, and then has spent his entire coaching career there. So he understands the program from California. So he understands the importance of recruiting California, but he also spends much of his recruiting calendar in the state of Texas, which is really important when you're in a state that doesn't produce a ton of local prospects. And, I think their continuity will continue on defense. So I do like the move. I think it was the obvious move, but one that we now know is going to happen.
West Virginia, Neal Brown, hot seat last year, 9 wins, a lot of expectations this year. Do you think he's a long-termer there now?
It's possible. I think if they can follow up and deliver on what they were talking about here, that they're going to be a really good team. I think West Virginia fans are going to look at Neal in a different light. I still don't know if he's fully embraced by that fan base. Despite delivering a 9-win season, I still think there's a lot of unrealistic thinking around West Virginia, colored by the Rich Rod era, that they can just replicate that. That's hard to do, especially when you're in a conference like this, when there aren't a lot of differences between the teams and you're going to have to win some close games. But I think if he can follow up with another solid season, potentially a special season, the view of him will be different, and maybe they'll be looking to hold on to him. He's a guy that played at Kentucky. Is Mark Stoops going to be there forever? If Mark Stoops were to leave, you could do some musical chairs. Do they come after Neal Brown? Does a Big Ten team come after Neal Brown? So I think I'm really a huge fan of his in terms of how he thinks about the game. We'll just have to see if he can follow up a good season with a potentially great season.
Chris Kleiman at Kansas State. You think he's in for the long haul?
Yeah, I think the fact that there aren't a lot of natural ties for him, it's not like he's worked at a lot of bigger programs before that he'd be a natural fit for, that he, some dream job that's out there. Now, I would say this, with Kirk Ferentz nearing retirement, Chris is from the state of Iowa, I believe Waterloo, has coached in that state, and would be one of several candidates you would think Iowa would at least consider, and would have to consider, and that would maybe be a hard job for him to turn down. But with Nebraska, seemingly on solid footing with Matt Rule, Luke Fickell at Wisconsin, those are jobs that you would have to look at as well if you're Chris Kleiman. But Iowa's the one, I think, because of his natural connection to the state. But really beyond that, I think he sees Kansas State as a place where he can continue to compete at a really high level. He's got a great relationship with Gene Taylor, their athletic director. He's shown he can recruit and bring guys in from the portal. Avery Johnson was a big time recruit. They added Dylan Edwards from Colorado, who was committed to Kansas State originally, Notre Dame, and then Colorado comes back. So it's a pretty good situation there.
Matt Campbell at Iowa State. I mean, it feels like people have been putting him in other jobs for a very long time, but he's kind of been in Ames for quite a deal.
Yeah.
Is maybe he going to wind up just doing his thing? Sometimes I think like people are like, I don't know, like Matt Campbell. I've had conversations with people about like, is Matt Campbell one of the best coaches in college football? It's like, why? Everyone talks about Matt Campbell all the time. He goes 7-6, but what he's done there compared to what Iowa State was historically is pretty remarkable. Think he'll stay for a while?
Well, Iowa State fans hate, when I put him on lists because I've done it quite a bit, and he has ended up staying. And part of that, may just be that he wasn't the right fit for some of the jobs that were out there. Part of it's just that he really enjoys it there in Ames. But it's just hard for me, a guy from Canton, Ohio. The fact that if and when Ohio State opens again or Penn State, and he has a really good season or two. I don't know how you don't consider that. I mean, the jobs that I always was told Matt would be interested in were Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. So we're talking about big time Midwest jobs here in the northern part of the country. So if it's not one of those, I don't think he's jumping to an SEC job. I don't think he's jumping to just any Big Ten job. But if those types of jobs come open, and again, right now it doesn't seem like any of them are likely to open anytime soon. I think he'd have to be a candidate.
He's not allowed to go to the SEC. We already won't allow that. Dion at Colorado.
Yeah, again, it's hard to envision him being there much beyond the season because his two sons will have moved on. Travis Hunter, who he's obviously very close with, will be on moving on to the NFL. It'll be very interesting. I think a lot of it depends on how they perform this season. Like if they put up another 4-8 or 3-9. Maybe he'll be inclined to try to prove that he can do it at this level. If they go out and do really well, and there's another opportunity for him at a place where you can really compete from a national championship in the South, in the Southeast, I think maybe he considers that. But I do think he genuinely likes it out there. But he's connected to Texas, has homes there, obviously connected to Florida, and won't have that family connection that he really does enjoy because of who's on the team right now.
Lance Leipold at Kansas. I mean, the fact that, again, Wisconsin and Nebraska both found potential long-term answers there after it felt like his name was in the mix, maybe at those jobs, potential to be a long-termer at Kansas?
I think that absolutely there's potential, especially with Kansas, redoing their stadium, making significant investments in their program that they've never had before. Travis Goff is a really good athletic director. They have an excellent relationship. Lance could have gone to Washington. He could have gone to some other programs. You mentioned the ones in the Big Ten where he's had some connections before. I do think there's a decent chance that he's just the guy who stays at Kansas and has a statue potentially built of him one day because of what he's been able to do to resurrect that program. But he's another one who will continue to be mentioned for Big Ten jobs. And again, if he feels like he can't compete or there's a ceiling to what he can do at Kansas, let's not forget that he won national championships at the Division III level at Wisconsin Whitewater. Can he realistically win a national championship at Kansas? No, I don't think so. Could he realistically win a national championship at one of those Big Ten schools that we talk about? I think it changes things. So he'd have to probably listen, but I think there's a decent chance that he does continue and maybe finish his career at Kansas. We've talked about how he might have one move left in him. I don't think he's one that's going to move around a ton, and he may very well just stay at Kansas the rest of his career.
And Scott Satterfield at Cincinnati and Kalani Sitake at BYU, again, not great years last year. Sitake's more established at BYU. Satterfield coming in after Luke Fickell had the greatest run in Cincinnati history is a tough spot to be in. I don't know that we can make a judgment on Scott Satterfield at Cincinnati right now, but also it can be a tough spot to come in after Cincinnati was one of the 5 winningest programs in college football over a 5-year period.
Right. I think Cincinnati's got justifiably high expectations and they've invested in their program. And, another year or two like the one that they had in 2023, it's going to be tough to survive that. And I think the question with Scott has always been not that he's a very good coach. And I have a lot of respect for him. Is he in the right place?
Yep.
He's so connected to the state of North Carolina, went to Louisville. There was some flirtation with South Carolina that didn't sit well with Louisville fans. I think he was in some degree of hot seat trouble before he ended up moving to Cincinnati. And it's still not his home territory. So I wonder, again, is he a long-termer at Cincinnati? I think we'll find out here in the next couple of years. But I also think if a job in the state of North Carolina. Mac Brown's not getting any younger. Dave Doran has been at NC State for a really long time. One of those jobs he could certainly be a candidate for.
Yeah. And Kalani Sitake at BYU, they got to see if they get the quarterback situation figured out.
And again, it's so much like there's certain programs in college football where there's nowhere where you can lose and it's okay. But if you're going to lose, it can't be because of the offense at BYU, because of who they are.
Right.
It's kind of like at Florida. Like if you're going to lose, you better still be scoring points and having really good quarterback play. I think, unfortunately, if it continues on this trajectory where they're not winning and the quarterback situation isn't great and it's not a fun offense, they would probably be more prone to seek out a change. But he's obviously one of their own. He's a popular guy among the players. He's done some good things there. He knows the state really well. But I think this season will be big for him.
Yeah. All right. Those are we cover all 8 of our northern teams.
Wow.
Half the Big 12 is North and half the Big 12 is South. And if you're in the South, we don't care about you. So we didn't mention those teams. We'll bleep out the parts where you said UCF or like Arizona or anybody where it's warm and sunny, because that's not what we're about here. But Adam Rittenberg, we acknowledge the fact that you cover the whole country. So you are allowed to talk about those other teams. But thank you for your northern focus here. And where can the people find you?
Find my work at ESPN Plus, ESPN.com. I'll have a bunch of preseason content coming up. I have a feature up right now on Jalen Daniels from Kansas and his hope to play a full season. So let's hope that happens for him this year.
All right. He's Adam Rittenberg. We love having him on. We love, what's the word I would use? Stealing your knowledge. So thank you, Adam.
Borrowing.
Sharing. Thanks for joining us here on KOTM.
Thanks, bud.
Joined now by Colorado punter Mark Vassett. Mark, thanks for joining us here on Kings of the North.
Thanks for having me.
You do know Mason Fletcher, the Cincinnati punter. Yeah. Why did you choose to punt at Colorado? How did you make your way there?
So my first 2 years I was at Louisville, University of Louisville, and decided to enter the portal. And I mean, when I started getting recruited by Colorado and the coach is Deion Sanders, who is the Hall of Famer, it was just a no-brainer to go there.
Yeah. Did you, were you familiar with Deion Sanders when you were in Australia?
No.
Yeah.
Obviously, I didn't grow up around American football. The first really memory I have of him is just seeing Jackson State videos popping up on my phone during that 22 season. And then that off season, obviously, when that became an option for me, obviously I started researching and finding out a lot about him. And it was realizing he's a legend of the game. It was just a no-brainer.
Nice. So is it any different punting in the mountains than it was at Louisville?
Honestly, no.
Okay.
Honestly, I don't feel the difference. A lot of people ask me about the altitude and how much that makes a difference, but I don't really feel it, to be honest with you.
We want to do a calendar of northern punters, right?
Okay.
We maybe like get you guys dressed up like in fur or something, looking like tough northern guys. We think it could sell. We think northern punters are something that people would be interested in. Do you think that could sell?
I think that could definitely sell.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the idea.
Would you be open to it?
Sure.
To being part of it? Do you think punters get enough respect?
I think they're getting more and more respect, but they can really change the game.
Yeah.
Like flipping field position, and when you get into those defensive battles, field position's so important. And those teams that have a great punter, a lot of the times come out on top.
Are you nervous when you stand back there waiting for the ball to be snapped to you?
No, I'm not nervous.
No butterflies. Did you have anything that you say to yourself, like when you walk out onto the field? Because the thing about it, you have 3, 4, 5 opportunities to do your job in the course of the game. Everybody else has maybe 70 opportunities. I just like, what is your mental prep to be like, I'm going to be the best that I can be in this moment?
Normally, I'm just thinking about like a coaching point, like focusing on my drop, just like laser focus on my ball drop is normally what I'm thinking about, because that's the most important thing for a good punt. You have to have that drop be in the exact right spot. But no, I don't really think about what could go wrong or what could go right. Like just go out there and do my best every time.
What do you think this Colorado football season is going to be like? It feels like it could be kind of fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun. We've addressed many needs through the portal, and our returning starters have also improved. So I think we're better at every position.
Yeah. What's the difference? I don't know how many people even do this. When you play for a very famous, very accomplished coach who accomplished something not as a coach. You know what I mean? Like you said, that helped draw you to Colorado. What's when you get recruited by Deion Sanders, what's it like then to play for that style of coach, that guy who has that background?
Oh, it's just the aura that he brings, like, and the energy, and just like when we were on that run early last season, every time you go on your phone, it's Colorado.
Yeah.
Like it was pretty surreal. But honestly, behind the scenes, Coach Prime's just hilarious and just a great person to be around. Like he cares about every person on that team too, and wanting the best out of them, whether it's football or just in life in general. So, like people try and talk about he only cares about certain players or his sons or like the best players on the team. He cares about everyone.
Yeah. So I like punting specifics, right? You have a bunch of different punts, right? You don't just punt the ball. Like how many different types of punts do you think you have in your repertoire?
Probably 6 or so that I would use in a game.
Okay.
But yeah, obviously it all depends on what yard line we're on, where, like left hash, right hash, middle. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah. And how do you decide what you're going to do in a certain situation? Is it deep discussion with the coach on the sideline? Okay, we need this here. We need extra hang time, or we really need you to boom it, or we need you to angle it, or do you just kind of go out and you figure it out?
Luckily for me, it's basically my choice. I can do what I've been feeling in that moment. So I'm really lucky to get that freedom.
Why do you have that freedom? Because you're so experienced and good?
Yeah, they trust me to just make the right decision and get a good punt. Because like if they're sending me out to do something I don't want to do in that situation, it might not get the best out of it, you know? So just giving me that freedom to do what I think's best. It's been really good. And something that I kind of wanted when I was looking for another team to come to.
Really? Is that part of the discussion you had?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and wanting to be a traditional, predominantly spiral punter, because that's what gets you to the next level. Rather than a lot of coaches, a lot of schools want a rugby, especially being Australian. They want a guy that rugby's a lot, but that doesn't really get you to the next level, which is what I'm trying to do.
So you had that in your head.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're going in the portal, I want to go somewhere where I'm comfortable. I want to win, but I want to be able to do what I need to do to prepare myself for the NFL.
Yes, sir. And Colorado was just the perfect fit. Like I said, I get that freedom, and Colorado, Coach Prime's he's kind of old school. So he likes that I'm a spiral punter and stays in the pocket rather than the guy that rolls out.
Do you think you are ready to be an NFL punter?
100%.
Or, like, I mean, of course you're going to always get better, but you think you have the skill set, the leg
100%
to do it right now?
Yeah, okay. 100%.
When you came to do this, did you have that in your head then, or did you just think,
I know
I'll
I
play
had the
college
potential,
football?
but I wasn't ready. Like I got to Louisville like 2 weeks before fall camp my freshman year. Like I had the shortest preparation to playing my first game.
What the heck? That's no time at all. You didn't even get to furnish your dorm room or your apartment or whatever, right? That was nuts.
Straight into it. So that was kind of a whirlwind. My freshman season, didn't play as well as I wanted to, but just made sure I got better every season, which I feel like I have.
How tall are you?
6'4".
6'4". That's a good size for a punter, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You're going to make it. I think you're going to make it, right? I mean, you got all you need.
I got all I need. I'm going to be the best punter in the country this year. So let's go.
So we also want to have a punter of the week. And then if we have the punter of the week, we want to have the punter of the week come on the show. Would you be open to coming back? And if you had a great week? Yeah.
Hit me up.
We want people to appreciate punters.
Punters are people too, like Pat McAfee says.
Yeah, I'm not a former NFL punter, so McAfee probably has already cornered the market on that. Mark Vassett, thank you for your time joining us and giving us a little glimpse into life at Colorado and as a future NFL punter.
Thank you for having me.
Joined now by Tyrel Kirkham, the Chief Marketing Officer of the Big 12, right? That means you get a lot of swag, like you can get all the goodie bags and stuff. Is that your deal?
I used to. I feel like it's diminished over time, but that used to be a perk of the gig.
Oh, very nice. Congratulations on that. So I am interested. Let me start with this thesis. The branding, the marketing, the things around the ball, right? Around the football affect the football. Yes?
Yes, indeed.
How so? Why is it important, do you think?
I mean, the product is the product, and we're always going to prioritize the product. However, to complement the product ensuring that there's a strong brand, something that people can gravitate towards. How do you take your existing base, make them excited?
Yes.
But how do you leverage outside opportunities to bring in casual fans to grow the brand? And that's my job. Every day I wake up and go to bed thinking about the growth of the Big 12 and what that means to support the phenomenal product that we have across our football program, our basketball programs, our Olympic sports. How does each of those touch points provide added value to the phenomenal product that we're blessed with on a daily basis?
Because the football's going to be good this year, right?
Yes, indeed.
But we're all realistic in the world right now, right? Sometimes good ball isn't enough. The Pac-12 played some good ball last year. They don't exist anymore. So how are you right now, right? So you have good ball, you have good football to sell, but you also have a conference that stretches from Arizona to West Virginia, from Cincinnati to Colorado, right? Are there challenges associated with that where you're so spread out, right? And you also have a lot of new members. What are other challenges when trying to brand that and market that?
I consider them opportunities,
Yes,
less
sir.
of a challenge. Four time zones, 10 states, 90 million people. That's an opportunity that we've got to capitalize on. I think that affords us the opportunity to really be part of the conversation, regardless of who's talking about the Big 12, right? We can catch you at 11 o'clock in the morning if you're up for a kickoff in the East Coast, and they'll still be talking about us when you go to bed at 10, 11 o'clock. For me, I look at this as a unique moment in time that you can take advantage of 16 phenomenal brands that are very much endemic to their local markets, equally as much as part of the national conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And we leverage those uniquely through a variety of ways. I'll also say that what we're afforded at the conference is the opportunity to go into New York City and do things at Rucker Park, or host our media days in Vegas, or make sure our championship game is held in Kansas City. So not only are we leveraging those markets that we currently reside in, but there's also an opportunity to tap into new markets and bring your brand to new places in hopes that those people now pay attention to what you have going on.
Was Vegas your idea? Was this you?
No,
Come on.
collective. This is, listen,
This is
where everything we do at the conference, we often say, whether you're the CEO or the custodian, everybody's got a voice in the room. And, we went through a pretty exhaustive exercise when we heard that the Dallas opportunity wasn't going to be available this year because of the World Cup. So we went on a little journey to see what other markets made sense. And we looked at, we need to be covered in the summertime.
Yes.
It's very important.
Mm-hmm.
So as you can imagine, we looked at all the venues around the country, and there was something about Vegas, not only welcoming the Four Corners, but just being the market that it is, and the visibility it will provide for our new 16 institutions, or our new alignment of our 16. It was a no-brainer to come here to Vegas, and it's over-delivered, minus the weather, but we've been inside for the bulk of the time. So
yeah.
Safe to say it's over-delivered for our administration, and more importantly, our student athletes. To see their faces here in this market has been very rewarding for me to justify the decision that we made.
Are you guys aggressive? Is the Big 12 aggressive? Is that a fair adjective? If it's not fair, I can find another adjective.
No, aggressive is a good word. I would complement that with disruptive. We're charting our own path. And that's something that is a direct byproduct of the commissioner, the man that leads us on a daily basis. It's the reason why I opted to come to this role. He and I had a previous relationship from the Brooklyn Nets, and the same aggression level as you think about, the Brooklyn Nets entering that market in New York, with the Knicks as being the core tenant for years on end, and him coming in and doing things differently to break through the clutter. And the same holds true here. But the best part of it is we do it on our terms at our time. And, to have that autonomy as a brand builder and a marketer and a creative with a leader of his magnitude is a marketer's dream.
Can I be honest?
Yes, sir.
As all this was shaken out with realignment and what the future of the sport is going to be, I thought we were going to get to two, right? There'd be kind of like a north-leaning conference and a south-leaning conference, and I don't know, not that everybody would be in there, but it really would be focused on that. And I don't think I think that anymore, because for your commissioner to stand up there and say, we're one of the three best conferences in college football, it feels like this is the type of you guys are going about it the way you have to go about it to carve out a niche. You know what I'm saying? In a world where we know what other conferences are doing. So you have to strike out and find your own lane, good ball, but not just good ball, something else, which is why you make the big bucks. Because you got to make sure, right? You got to let the people know that, hey, Utah's good, Arizona's good, Kansas State is good, West Virginia's good, Iowa State's good. You got to watch us, but you got to help give them a reason, right?
Yes. And we, to your initial statement, we know who we are. We know what we have to do. We can poke our chest out and say with confidence where we stand because we truly believe it. And we like to evoke the same emotion and our membership, our student athletes to go out and compete and represent for this conference on a daily basis. I think for me, it's also, yes, celebrating those institutions and all of their successes and, finding new ways. So as I think about a branding opportunity, people thought we were crazy when we said we're going to bring in the WWE to be a part of our football championship. People thought we were crazy when we said we were going to Rucker Park to enhance our basketball narrative in the Northeast. But those are all things that bring in casual audiences to support our good ball. And that's something that is very strategic and tactical in our approach. And, I often say, I'd like to cite the example. I think Brett stole it from me yesterday when he was on the dais, but like the Nelly performance at halftime last year for our football championship, we peaked at halftime. So think about that exercise. Our ratings peaked at halftime for Nelly performing with our marching bands. And that allowed all these new people that were coming there for Nelly to get a taste of Big 12 football. And that's how we're approaching it. I look at it as a chess, not checkers approach. And I think it's truly become a point of differentiation for us. And it's going to be a sort of tactical approach that we're always going to think about our business with.
So that, like, more of that.
Yes.
That's what we should expect.
Yeah, more of that, but also not losing sight of, Pro Day and what that meant for us to work with the NFL, right? Because that's one side where people say, hey, you're just tapping into music and you're leveraging the moment. But to partner with the NFL on our Pro Day and bring all of our student athletes together at the Star on a big stage on NFL Network, have all of these agents and GMs and front office staff from NFL teams there front and center to watch our product. That's something that, looks at conventional wisdom and just sort of the ways of the yesteryear and says, how do we reinvent it? How do we reimagine the old, mix it with the new, try not to, alienate anyone in the process and do what's best for the brand. And those are just two examples. I wouldn't say small, but two examples how we approach our business on a day in and day out basis.
All right. So everyone's got to pay players now, right? And we're just starting down that road. So I think now sell everything. I would make every uniform. I would make it look like NASCAR stuff. I love the idea of you guys having naming. You need to explore every revenue for branding and financial success, right? And a lot of this stuff, like people get, it's just words, man. It's just like, I don't know. I mean, you have like British soccer teams have whole brands. Your whole team name is an airline, right? I don't know. Sell. I get it. Tradition matters. We're not going to change your team colors. You'll recognize your team's jerseys, but within that, sell everything. Good plan?
I'm a brand first individual. So selling everything with due diligence to ensure that you've vetted the process. For us, it's incumbent upon us to bring value to our membership, right? That value means turning over every stone imaginable to enhance our brand, to enhance commercial opportunities. And that's what we do. We're never going to lay dormant at the conference level. Every day, we're thinking about new ideas to provide value for those 16 institutions. And if that means unique commercial opportunities, by all means, we should explore that. And, last year we had a banner year with respect to sponsorship sales. And for us, I think that's just sort of the beginning of where we could go with this because partners want to be associated. That's the value I find as a brand builder, the brands that want to come and be associated with the Big 12 because they love everything that we're doing. They want to sponsor that halftime show. They want to sponsor that student initiative and provide additional resources. They want to create a more enhanced fan experience for the guests that participate in our championships. So With commercialization comes beautiful opportunities to extend your brand into the marketplace and find other ways to do it. I mean, we're here in Las Vegas with Totino's, all right, pizza rolls. And the fact that our student athletes, this is something that's part of their everyday life. I'm getting the nostalgia feel for some of our media members and alum who are here, who are, remember their dorm days of what Totino's, the role they played. So to be able to bring these partners in and integrate them to enhance the experience for all parties involved is a win-win scenario. And that's how we're looking at the value proposition with respect to commercialization opportunity.
Yeah. You can't, in this world, you guys can't shrink. You can't say, well, we did our best. Oh, we tried. You gotta a little bit, right?
Say with your chest out. Like we gotta walk confidently and ensure that we're doing our due diligence to provide as much value as we can.
Walk my chest out. Look at that. I'm at the Big 12 meeting today. It's very interesting. And I will tell you, sometimes on this show, we all the lawsuits and stuff and like the office. I didn't get into this, talk about lawsuits. So we like to talk about ball, but we have to have the understanding of all the things that do affect the football, that affect the experiences for fans, that affect it for the players and the rivalries and all those things. So I do think it's smart, but I would want to be involved with a conference that's getting after it. And nobody knows what the future holds, but let's get after it. And it feels like that's what you guys are doing. Good job.
Yeah, have to do it. That's what we're wired to do.
Yeah. All right. Tyrel Kirkham. If like so Nelly, that's a high bar. So it's like, but like, what's the Super Bowl halftime show? Is like usually you guys like, right? It's like, what's the inspiration? It's like, let's have people talking about the Big 12 halftime show.
Yeah. And I want, one of the things, the vision that I had coming here, I felt that championship games within collegiate athletics happened that day and ended that day. My goal is to create runways and opportunities to sustain our success. So if you think about the Super Bowl, it's everything that happened from Wednesday on.
Yeah. And
then you get to the game and then you've got a 2 days, multiple days of talk value following the game. How come we can't make our Big 12 championship feel the same exact way? It doesn't have to be Saturday at 11 a.m. Central and end at 3 o'clock. We've got to find ways to build the hype and awareness on Thursday, Friday, get people really galvanized and excited. And now when you think about a 12-team playoff, it's a priority of mine to ensure that team that clinches that Saturday afternoon, there's a moment in time for them to celebrate because we know we've got an automatic qualifier. But then I'm mentally marketing brain. What am I doing to make sure the team that lost is jockeying for their position to get into the CFP?
And that's exactly it. Because marketing and branding, we can't pretend it has no impact in a subjective world, right? Someone's going to guarantee a spot. And then I was talking about, you're going to be fighting with fourth team from the SEC for a spot. So you have to make sure that the world understands, and the people in that committee room, but perception leans on them. They have to understand what Big 12 football is. And you can't sit back and just say, well, we had a great game, but I wish more people had paid attention. You've got to attack it.
Yeah, and that's why if you heard the commissioner's comments yesterday, he spent some time talking about branding the month of November, and he working titled Race to the Championship. But, it's going to be anyone's game November 1st in the Big 12. That's just how deep we are, how the parity that exists. So to take that month of November and create awareness that you've got to tune into these games in early November because they mean something on December 7th when we finally land on who our champion's going to be, and ultimately that second, hopefully, third team, who knows, gets in. But that's where how we're thinking about this, and you've got to be building a brand. There's someone on a committee that's always listening. That maybe that one brag stat, that initiative that we put forth, is what serves as a convincing mechanism to sway their opinion.
You do freelance work at all? You're not available for freelance. Sorry, on the side. Did they let you do that on the side?
Omar keeps me way too busy. I'm surprised I had 20 minutes for this.
We need some brand awareness here at Kings of the North. So if you have any ideas, I'll pick your brain. We got to get the word out to the people. But we need a halftime show. Maybe we can get concert.
All ears, but I love the name, and that's a good start from any good brand has a great name. So the next thing I'll explore is their logo that corresponds with it, and we'll get into the visual identity.
And then we got to get a better host, and then we'll be fine. Tyrel Kirkham from the Big 12. I think this stuff is interesting when we connect it to ball, which you just did, because it matters. Thank you so much for joining us here on KOTN.
My pleasure, Doug. Thank you for the time.
Joined now at Big 12 Media Days by old friend Shehan Jeyarajah. Shehan, good to see you. And we did a show for 2 years?
Yeah. I guess it was 2 years. Man, time flies. That's crazy.
You were a wee lad, and now you're married and you have a baby and you have a whole life. But we had never met. This is the first time we've been the same place together. So am I more handsome or less handsome in person than you expected?
You're about what I expected. What about me? How do I look?
The fit is so on fleek. Is that
I think that's out now. I think that we're past that.
Oh, really? On fleek is out? I just figured it out. So you are the king of the Big 12, but you're more than that. But this is your territory. So we are at Big 12 Media Days. What do you think of this version of the Big 12? Do you like that Oklahoma and Texas aren't here so everybody can kind of breathe? Or does it feel like there's a huge gaping hole, a crater where the Sooners and Longhorns used to be?
Well, the funny thing about it is, yes, obviously they miss out for not having Texas and Oklahoma, but I think in a funny way, it clarifies some of their brand identity. This is a league of strivers in so many ways. It's a league of 16 teams that I think all want to be competitive, all want to compete for bowls, all think that maybe they can get more than that. And so I think that when you talk to people over the past, I haven't been doing this for 20 years, but the last 10 years, you often hear, well, we had this idea, but Texas and Oklahoma didn't go for it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of gone now. There really isn't a veto in the Big 12 from anywhere. And I think that this is a group of teams, and let's just compare it to the ACC for a second, right? There is such a stratification in the ACC where there's certain people who clearly want to get out and it's ruining everything for everyone else. That's not really the case here. Utah maybe a little wants to get to the Big 10, but everybody else, I think, understands they're here and they're going to be a part of this. And we need to make this the best version of what this can be. And I mean, I've said it before. I don't know if there's a team out of the 16 that can win a national championship. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I also think there are teams that can win some games. I think that there are teams that will be highly competitive. I think this will be the most fun conference race every single year to watch. Brett Yormark said, we're going to brand it as the race to the championship in a lot of ways in the month of November because there will be so many teams still involved. So this is an incredibly watchable league. And in some ways, I view this as a little bit of a throwback league just in terms of, winning the conference is going to be the most important thing. And yeah, whatever happens nationally happens, but we don't need to get there until we get there.
Can a major... And I probably shouldn't do it because if I do this, and there's only two major leagues.
No, there's only two. We can be real.
Can a major league exist and thrive in a world where maybe winning a national championship isn't actually the goal? The goal is what you just said: a great race, a great regular season, winning the championship, and getting to the playoff really means something. And then once you're there, maybe you win a quarterfinal game against an SEC or a Big Ten team, and that's awesome. And then, maybe you play a great game in the semis against Georgia or Ohio State or something. And that's a version of success. And that we're not sitting around saying oh man, I can't believe the Big 12 hasn't won a national title in 10 years because that's okay. Can that be a realistic possibility, or does that feel like a league that's just going to eventually get eaten up by the other two leagues?
Well, I think that the key is going to be when they get to the playoff and when they play the big two leagues, they can't get embarrassed, right? You can't have that TCU game happen every single time that these teams match up, because then you are on the level more of the Western Michigan. Then you are more on the level of, some of the teams that have come through of Liberty this past year, right? You can't be that. I don't think you have to win all those games. I don't think that you have to win most of those games, but I think you just have to prove that you are playing the same sports in a lot of ways as everybody else. Another way that I'll look at it too is in some ways in recruiting rankings. If the top 100 players are all going to two conferences, that's a major warning sign. Like that is a big deal. We started to see actually since Texas and Oklahoma has left, Kansas State just landed the top recruit in program history. Lincoln Cure, a 5-star tight end, first 5-star in program history, right? So I think that as long as there is competitiveness where it feels like they are playing, again, the same sport. And also, again, when you get to the playoffs, if you win a game or two, I think that's fine. the comparison, and we obviously used to run a playoff show.
Yeah.
The comparison that I've made is for some teams, making the playoff or the tournament is a success. For some, making a Sweet 16 is like a great season. Others are playing for a national championship, but most aren't. Most of the 68 in the field are not playing for a national championship. I think that there's a place for that in the expanded college football playoff to still be considered a major league, even if you're not winning national championships. But I do also think that the competitiveness level has to be there, the quality of teams, the quality of competition. And look, we're also going to get to see some of this work in real time because there is an ACC with 2 or 3 national title contenders versus a Big 12 with 16 good teams, which the ACC doesn't have. We're going to kind of see which one is more valuable long term.
Does the ACC have to be national title contenders? Listen, because here's the thing. We get...
Yeah. Florida State, Clemson, and NC State, obviously.
Oh, yeah. I put NC State in the playoff. I think people think Miami is back. Miami hasn't been relevant in college football in 2 decades.
No, it's fair. It's
Florida
fair.
State.
It's a brand, though, that's won one in the past 25 years, right? Like, it's one that has been competitive. Now, they haven't done it since they got to the ACC. If you want to say that there's just 2, that's fine. I mean, but we have seen Florida State in 2013 win a title. We saw Clemson win 2 of them. I think they're heading the wrong direction, but I do think that they are brands that on the high end can win a national championship. Most likely. It'll be harder now. But I think that's also why you see the fervency from them to try to escape where they're at, because I do think that there's a little more of a ceiling on it. And so, again, historically, there's the Power 5, there's the Group of 5. There's these 2 big delineations. I think that's going to change a little bit to where there's a Power 2, there's kind of a Mid 2, and then there's kind of everybody else. And maybe even within the everybody else, right? Mountain West and AAC, we kind of view them as a little bit different as well. But I think that's going to be okay. But also, that's kind of the world that the Big East lived in, and ultimately, it was not okay.
I think it could be okay, right? So you have the Yankees and the Red Sox, and then you have like the Dodgers. But the White Sox and the Twins and the Guardians and like teams like that in the middle of the country in a smaller market, lesser payrolls, can have interesting, successful baseball, striving for something, win your division, get to the playoffs, hope you get hot, hope you have a peak year. And I don't know that anybody says, well, they're not the Dodgers and the Yankees, fold them up. Let's not have them exist anymore. Like that idea, but it's not a minor league.
Right.
No offense to the Group of 5, but like I do creating a mid-tier that it's not Power 4 or 5 and then Group of 5, that there is a middle tier led by the Big 12. It's up to us. It's honestly, we have to help this sport define itself. Brett Yormark seems pretty good at that, right? I mean, a showman, like contextualize. I think this sport can help lead the way in helping college football and its fans. Perception is reality, brother. Come on, man. Like you have to be able to look at it the right way so you can understand whether a team is actually succeeding or not.
Well, and I think the other thing too is that we talked about this when the 12-team playoff came out, is that there are now so many more pathways to success. It used to be, if you're not the last one standing, then that was probably a failure. I don't think it's going to be the case anymore. A team that I'm going to get a chance to talk to tomorrow at Mountain West Media Days is Boise State. If Boise State comes in as the 12 seed and plays a not embarrassing game against the 5 seed, heck yeah, that is an incredible season for them. That is a fully deserved season. They got their chance. They're in the mix. And by the way, like people are going to look at Boise State long term and be like, oh, that's a place that I can play in the playoff. That's pretty cool. And I think that that's going to be the case for the Big 12 in a lot of ways, where, you know what, you're not going to be favored to beat Georgia in those games, but you'll get to play them. You'll get to be on that stage. And, the other part, too, is that I think in the 4-team playoff world, there was such a consolidation because you almost had to go to one of like 6 programs to actually be competitive. I think that that's going to change. And NIL has already started that process in a lot of ways. We've seen some non-traditional programs start to hit at a higher level in recruiting than we've seen before. But I think that more could be on the way, more could be on the table. One thing that's going to be fascinating is how House v. NCAA ends up impacting how players are compensated and whether it does even it or whether, SD and Big Ten kind of still go way above it. I think that the details are going to be very important. But I think that there is a place, because this is the thing that I've said since Texas and Oklahoma decided to leave the Big 12. Look around. Which of these programs fundamentally changed right? Which of these programs fundamentally can't achieve things now that they could achieve before? I mean, look over there, right? Arizona wasn't winning the national championship before. Right?
Yeah.
It didn't matter, right? Baylor, they weren't winning the national championship before. And so I don't think that it changes the world for these actual teams all that much. Now, the perception of the league will be important, and more than anything, the perception of the league will be important because it will drive ratings, which will drive money. And I think the big issue is the Big 12 just signed a new television contract. It puts them in sort of the low to mid 30 range, which means that they'll be able to push up to maybe 50 million in total compensation whenever it's all said and done. And when you look at the AAC, they're making 7, right, in television money. When you look at Conference USA or the Sun Belt, they're making like $1 million or less. That's, I think, where you start to run into issues is if the television providers say, no, this isn't really big time football. And so far that has not happened. They just did a renegotiation of everything and said, we still feel like this league has value. So I don't think that they're in any sort of trouble right now. And again, when I look around, I see a lot of teams that are going to have opportunities to accomplish things that they've never accomplished before.
I think to do all of this, you have to be an aggressive number 3. You can't be like a...
Well, Brett Yormark has made that clear.
We're number 3. We're number 3. You can't... So Brett Yormark is saying, like, we're the deepest conference in the country. We're going to be the best conference. I like a boisterous, like, probably out over their skis number 3. That's the way to be number 3 now. There are some things here in place. The main thing is that there's some good football programs. Utah's a good football program. K-State is a good football program. Arizona, if Arizona's back, Arizona can be a good football program, right? That's the main thing. But the other thing is leadership matters in this changing world. And I think they might have, he might be the perfect number 3 commissioner. Because he's going to try to tell everybody we're number 1. Everyone's like, okay, whatever. But that's how you have to think. Well, don't give in.
And again, the blessing, it's funny. So I was visiting my relatives in the Bay Area. So, you hear a lot of talk like this. But the way that they described the league yesterday was as a mature startup. And that is, I think, a blessing in some ways because this league has only existed as the Big 12 since 1996. The other leagues have existed for much longer than that.
Yeah.
Now, obviously there's connection to the Big 8, but that's kind of, nobody really considers this a true successor to the Big 8 in that kind of way.
It's like that ship, right? The ship of Theseus, right? So you had Texas.
That's not what I expected.
No, you had Oklahoma and Nebraska, which were the Big 8.
Yes.
And now neither of them are here. Right. And it's like, is this the grandson of the Big 8? I don't know.
This is something new. And I think that being something new gives you the power to try things. And Lord knows the Big 12 has tried things. A lot of them have worked. Some of them are dumb. And I think that's like the fact that all these schools, and I think that is a characteristic of these 16 schools, is they're willing to try these things.
Yeah.
And some of them are going to work, and they've even been, they've alluded to without actually saying a couple of times, like, we're going to think about things like naming rights, right? Like just ways to generate more stuff that isn't about these schools thinking they're more holy than that, because they don't. They're strivers. They want to move up. They are not satisfied just with what they are right now, and they think that more is possible.
And I do think if you tune in and watch a Big 12 game this year and you watch Utah or Kansas State or West Virginia or Iowa State or Arizona or Kansas play football, you will like it.
Yes.
So you have to back it up on the field.
Yes.
But the conversation, which is kind of what we're doing here in Kings of the North, every conversation in college football doesn't have to be, well, is that team good enough to beat Georgia?
Right. Because the answer is most of them aren't, if not all of them, in a lot of years.
So the Big 12 doesn't have to have that conversation. They can do their thing over here. And then guess what? Let's get in a quarterfinal and see what happens. Let Cam Rising take his shot.
And you know what conference didn't have a team that was good enough historically to beat Alabama and Georgia when they were title teams? That would be the Big 12 with Texas and Oklahoma as well.
I actually think I'll let you go on this one. I like Texas better than Georgia this year. Is that crazy?
It's a little crazy. It's a little. It's not an insane take. It's not an insane take, but I think that Georgia still deserves to be number 1 right now.
My last playoff predictions, I didn't have Georgia in. Is that crazy? Didn't have Georgia in my playoff. 9-3 Georgia.
Well,
12-team playoff. 9-3 Georgia.
You know what? Stay up north. I don't know if you're gonna be allowed back down
Dog
here.
mentality. Dog mentality. Shehan, where can the folks find you when they want to listen to you?
You can listen to a
And read.
little podcast called the College Football Survivor Show. I was supposed to record this morning, and then I was too tired, so I did not do that. We're pushing it to later
You're in
this
Vegas.
week. But you can also follow me on Twitter, Shehan Jeyarajah. Read all my work at cbssports.com.
It's good to see you. See, I thought maybe you were AI generated up until this moment. It's like he's ahead on a Zoom. I don't know. Is that a real person? But you are here in the flesh. It's great to see you, man. Thanks for joining us on Kings of the North.
Thank you for having me.
And that'll do it. That's it for Kings of the North. We're leaving Las Vegas. We're getting out of the 116-degree heat. We appreciate everybody at the Big 12 that helped us out with this. We really appreciate the hard work of our producer, Mike Yorostowski, who coordinated everything from back home, pieced all the interviews together, made these shows possible. Great to talk to Bill Landis. And then it turned out my daughter, Kira, was here and helped us make sure we could do everything we needed to do on the scene because we needed somebody here to do that. And she did a great job with that. So thanks to everybody who was watching, who was talking about Kings of the North, who was spreading the word. I'm still trying to explain the show to people, but if you give me 20 seconds, I think I can get you to go, oh. And then once you say that, then we'll see if you like it or not. All right. Thanks to you guys for being here most of all. For Bill Landis, for all of our guests, for Mike Yorostowski. I'm Doug Lesmerises. And from Big 12 Media Days, that was Kings of the North.